presented by Caltech.
Good afternoon. Everybody happy to be here? All ready to be techers? Yeah, excellent. So, welcome to Caltech's Convocation. I'm Joe Shepard, Vice President for Student Affairs and Professor of Aeronautics. I know that the students and parents alike have been looking forward to this day and the beginning of a new chapter in your lives. But before we plunge into our rather hectic program of activities, this event gives us a chance to gather together and to celebrate your joining us. And for the families and friends here in the audience, you'll have a chance to learn about what makes Caltech such an exciting and special place. For all of our incoming students, it gives you a chance to set the tone for your personal growth, intellectual journey, and that is at the core of the Caltech experience. As we set out on that journey, we'd like to take a chance today to introduce you to some other aspects of Caltech. And our program is really designed to share with you some of the unique and interesting opportunities that Caltech students can be involved with outside the laboratory and the classroom. Each of our speakers has a common interest in activities that are related to outreach in the local and the international community. To get our program started, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Evan Kirby, who's Assistant Professor of Astronomy. Evan has joined Caltech in 2014 after his graduate education and postdoctoral studies at UC Santa Cruz, Caltech, and Irvine. Evan studies galaxies and stars. Studying galaxies and stars is something that has a very long and distinguished tradition here at Caltech. Some of the origins of this can be found back at the beginnings of the Institute. And Evan is in the line. His research studies the composition of stars and galaxies and the origin of elements in the periodic table. Is that the entire periodic table, Evan? Not quite. Without further ado, Evan.
Thank you, Professor Shepard. The theme for today's convocation is student outreach, and I'm going to frame that in terms of science ambassadorship. Now that you're all here at Caltech, you are representatives of Caltech, and I'm going to say that you're ambassadors to Caltech. When you interact with people in that local and that international community, you're representing Caltech, and because of what Caltech represents, you're actually representing science itself. So you are now, I appoint you, ambassadors to science for the broader community and for the world. Now let me give you a brief overview of what I do in terms of science ambassadorship. Every summer I fold high school students into my research group, and we do research using telescopes like the Palomar telescope and the Keck telescope. One of the fundamental tenets of my program is that the students are doing real, original research. They're not doing canned projects where we already know the answer. We're asking questions to which no one knows the answer, and we're finding out those answers for the first time. And it's very important to me that these high school students get a real experience of what it means to be a scientist and to be a researcher. And so I'm giving them the real cutting-edge Caltech experience. Sometimes it's a frustrating process because we don't know the answers to the questions, and so we don't know if the answers we get are correct. Sometimes we don't come up with answers at all. But when we do, it can be a real magical experience, and I want those students to get a taste for what science is really like. Now, I'm going to give you 3 messages today. The first is that it's your duty to be a science ambassador. Now that you've come to this prestigious place, you have a responsibility to bring your science ambassadorship to the world. Second, I'm going to say that despite what you might think, despite what you might hear in the sensationalist media, people really do want to hear about science. They want to know what you're researching and what you're doing here at Caltech. And number 3, Caltech is going to give you innumerable ways to conduct your duty of being a science ambassador. So let me lay the groundwork for why I believe that it is your duty to be a science ambassador. And I have a research poll here from the Pew Research Center conducted a few years ago. It's a very simple poll. They asked scientists from the American Association for the Advancement of Scientists, what do you believe about this question? And they asked a more typical cross-section of the US population, what do you believe about this question? And so you can see that there's a large agreement gap between what scientists believe and what the typical US adult believes. For example, is it safe to eat genetically modified foods? 88% of scientists say yes, whereas 37% of US adults say yes. Is climate change mostly due to human activity? Again, there's an agreement gap of 37 percentage points. It's fine that people can choose what they want to believe. That's totally fine. I'm not objecting to that. What I would object to is if we did not do our proper duty of being science ambassadors, of presenting our research calmly, rationally, explaining how we got to those conclusions and why we believe they're important. So, if that didn't convince you, perhaps a more venial argument will, which is money. Much of the research we do here is conducted with federal funding, federal taxpayer dollars. And if the people who are representing our elected officials don't believe in what you and I believe about the advancement of science, if we're not doing our duty of science ambassadors, then those people aren't going to elect people who share our views. So if you are a proper science ambassador, and the people that you're talking to we get an understanding for why science is important, and they elect elected officials who share those views, then perhaps we'll continue to be able to do the research we do here. So you can see the White House has suggested that perhaps science and technology funding should be cut drastically, but thankfully so far Congress hasn't agreed, and the federal funding has been mostly flat, not exactly rising. But you can see this could change on an election cycle. And so if you convince the people who elect our public officials that science is worthy to do, then the elected officials will also agree with their constituents. Now, the talk I've given so far has been sort of politically based and activism based, and that's great. If that's your thing, I highly encourage you to get involved in it. In fact, just a few months ago, right here on campus, we had something called the March for Science. At about 100 yards from here on Beckman Lawn, there were close to 1,000 people who assembled, and they all got together just to have fun, really, but also to march from Beckman Mall to Old Town Pasadena, just to show, like, this is what we believe in, this is science, science is worthy of doing. And as you can see, it was a kind of a fun event. There was a festive atmosphere, people dressed up as Star Trek characters, all sorts of things. But I fully understand if activism and politics is not your thing. It's not really my thing either. And in fact, I would argue that it's more effective to tell people what you believe than to tell people what to believe. If you tell people why you're passionate about science, and if you tell people how you got there and what you're doing here at Caltech, that's going to be far more effective than holding up signs and saying things loudly. So here's an example of how to be a science ambassador by telling people what you believe and why it's so cool. The Caltech Chemistry Club a few months ago went out to science night at Field Elementary School to show little children why they think it's so cool to do science. And those little children are going to grow up thinking that, well, science is pretty cool. Now, there's many more ways to get involved, and I'm going to show you an example, and some of the speakers after me are also going to be showing examples of how you can get involved in science ambassadorship here at Caltech. But first, I want to tell you that science ambassadorship is worthwhile because there is a hunger out there. People really do want to hear about science. And I'm going to show you some pictures now of examples of how in the astronomy department we conduct science ambassadorship. We have a lecture and stargazing series that happens once a month where someone in the astronomy department or a related department will come give a half-hour lecture right over there in the Cahill building about the research that they're doing. And then, believe it or not, we go to the soccer field behind the department and we do stargazing from here in Pasadena. You can actually see some bright things in the sky, even with the light pollution here in Pasadena. We can see planets, we can see star clusters, and we have telescopes, and we have naked eye observing as well. The thing that's really cool about this is we kind of pack the auditorium. I'll show you a picture later of a typical night where there's standing room only to this. And this is just people who on a Friday night, they could be doing something else, they decided to come here and listen to astronomers talk about their research. That's pretty cool. Here's another example, Astronomy on Tap, and this is only for you if you're 21 or over, I'm sorry to say. But we go to bars in Old Town Pasadena, and we actually give talks on what we do in research. And this is on a Monday night, and we pack that bar. There is standing room only in that bar. And it's just kind of like a science or a pub night, a pub quiz night, but it's for science, and it's for Caltech astronomers to come do that. And we're going to expand this to things beyond astronomy, too. So if you're interested in that and you're 21 over, get involved. If you're interested in volunteering for the lecture in stargazing, look how many people there are. We need people to come help us manage this crowd and work the telescopes. So here's some hard data showing exactly how many people come to these events. We literally have hundreds of people come to these events every month. And sometimes we have special events where well over 1,000 people show up to hear about it. One great example is the announcement of the discovery of gravitational waves about 1.5 years ago. There were so many people over here, it was ridiculous. Now, Caltech is going to give you ways to realize your duty of being a science ambassador. Now, you're probably not an astronomer like me. Maybe you will be an astronomer like me. That'd be awesome. But it's especially incumbent upon me as an astronomer to be a science ambassador because there's not really a lot of practical applications for what I do. It's really learning about the universe for the sake of learning about the universe. I'm learning about things that no one's ever thought of or no one's ever known before. I'm learning about how the elements are created. Maybe there's going to be an application one day, but for now it's just cool to know about things that no one's ever known before. And so that means it's especially incumbent upon me to be ambassador because I need to tell everyone about how cool this is, and I need to tell them that these are things that humanity has never known before, and this is why it's important to do science, so that we can continue progressing and continue advancing. But it's not just astronomy that you can get involved in. There's biology outreach, there's chemistry outreach, computer science outreach. A lot of the pictures you're seeing here are for K-12 students. We have outreach events all the way from elementary school to middle school to high school. And we get, you saw earlier on the slide, some high school students learning how to do computer programming with an eye towards scientific computer programming. The last slide showed you Mechanical Engineering 72, where the students like you will build these water robots to conduct these water Olympics events. And then some middle school students come out to help with the finale of the robots battling each other in the water. Really cool. So if you want to get involved, and actually I'd argue that it's kind of your duty to get involved, then on the next slide you'll see some contact information for your first stop for science ambassadorship here at Caltech, which is the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Outreach. They're the place that you can go to get involved in outreach. You'll also hear about some of our student clubs, and they're also a place where you can go to get involved in student outreach. If you are interested in the astronomy events that I mentioned, you can go to our website, astro.caltech.edu/outreach, to volunteer your time to get involved in those events. And in fact, this year we're starting a new event in addition to the lecture in stargazing and astronomy on tap called Science Train. We'll go to the Metro Gold Line and just sit there during people's commutes with signs that say, "Ask me about black holes." I'm serious, this actually happens. And so people will come up and say, "Why are you holding a sign that says, 'Ask me about black holes'? Are you kind of a crazy person?" Like, no, I'm actually a Caltech researcher, and this is what I know about black holes. And you could do it too. You could go sit in the Gold Line and say, "Ask me about DNA." Or ask me about the human brain, or something like that. And so that's how we do outreach. It's kind of spontaneous and not really what you expect on your morning commute. So let me close with this awesome video put together by the Office of Strategic Communications of an event we conducted here on campus just a few weeks ago for the solar eclipse. Now this is from Pasadena, so this wasn't the totality of the solar eclipse. This is just a partial solar eclipse from Pasadena. But nonetheless, 3,000 people came to this campus to experience this partial solar eclipse with other excited people and Caltech scientists. They could have seen this from their backyard, but they chose to come to this campus to share the excitement of other people who are passionate about science and with Caltech scientists. So just to reiterate my second point, people want to learn about science. There's an insatiable hunger for this out there. So the audience is receptive. They're just waiting for you. Go out there, do your duty, be a science ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. And you are all officially appointed science ambassadors. So I'd like to follow up on that by introducing our next speaker, who is one of our student science ambassadors, Manuel Razo Mejia. And Manuel is a fourth-year graduate student in biophysics, and like many of our graduate students, he comes to us from international community. He was born and raised in central Mexico, and he got his undergraduate degree at the National Polytechnic Institute. Here at Caltech, he is studying the quantitative prediction of biological evolution, which is a very current topic, which involves combining information from the fields of physics, biology, and information theory. Quite a challenging but interesting topic. But I believe what Manuel is going to speak to us about is his own personal journey and how he came to be a Caltech and the excitement that he finds in science and being an ambassador for science. Manuel.
All right. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here today to tell you about this grad student initiative called Clubes de Ciencia México. Specifically, I want to tell you how a very simple but very powerful idea can become a transformative experience for students. It might sound arrogant to claim that we can change people's lives, but I speak from my own experience when I tell you that the only reason I'm right here, right now, standing as a fourth-year grad student in what we all know is the best university in the world, is because of this program. So to tell you what we do in Clubes de Ciencia, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own journey. So I was born and raised in central Mexico, in that state called Guanajuato, and I went to this small countryside campus of the National Polytechnic Institute, where you can see we were very proud of our dirt roads and our wild grass, so the gardens didn't look like the ones here on campus. For sure, the most attractive feature on campus was this concrete canal that, given the geographical proximity of the farm next to the school, every time it rained, well, you can imagine it was a very pleasant smell. Nevertheless, that smell didn't stop us from dreaming big. I came to this school with the illusion of becoming a professional scientist one day, and I wasn't alone. Like my friend here, Roman, in the picture, we really wanted to become scientists, but for somehow, these dreams seemed to be set for failure from the get-go. In one of the darkest moments of my life, one of my professors told me, and I quote, well, I translate because he was in Spanish, but she told me, Manuel, you are not going to make it. You're going to fall down, and I'm going to make sure you stay there. You are just a kid from Mexico. My case is not isolated. There's hundreds of kids in Mexico and in Latin America with the same situation. So what can a grad student like me do? What is what we can do to transform people's lives? This person right here, Adrian Hinich, he's now a grad student at Harvard University. He came to my school, and he proposed this idea that I'm going to explain to you in a second. But the inspiration that he gave us was the spark that we needed to embrace the challenge and just start our scientific journey. And you can see that it was not only me the one that followed an academic career. We were 6 students that started this program, and most of us continue in academia. So it gave very good results. What is this idea, this concept of a science club? Well, basically, if you decide to apply with us as an instructor, we will pair you with a grad student in Mexico, and you will design a workshop that then we will fly you to one of our 7 locations in Mexico, and you will deliver this intense workshop during a week in August. We want these topics to be at the frontier of what we know and we don't know. We want the students to really understand what it is to be a scientist. We don't want textbook examples. We want to have cutting-edge science taught to these students. So if you decide to apply with us, you'll be assigned about 15 to 20 students from senior high school to first and second year undergrads, and they will look up to you not only as an instructor, but as a mentor. And that is the key. Sometimes all these kids need is a spark of inspiration. So what is what we do in Clubes de Ciencia as an association? I think we can divide it into 3 aspects. As I just told you, we share science on site, so if you apply with us, you will fly to Mexico and teach there. But we have dozens of students in the US and in Mexico participating, so we are assembling this huge network of people willing to make a difference. So we see ourselves as a way to generate networks of mentoring so that we can support students through their path to become scientists. And I won't have time to tell you today, but we are designing and sharing online courses to continue the preparation of the students. So our mission, in my mind, is very simple and straightforward. We're looking to inspire the next generation of scientists in Mexico and to show them that in order to be a scientist, you don't have to be born in Germany, you don't have to be born in the US, you just have to have passion. You have to have love for science and for discovery, and you have to be willing to accept the challenge that comes with. After I participated in that workshop myself, I was truly inspired, and I stayed in contact with this guy, Adrian. And he served as my mentor. He guided me through the process of applying to summer programs in the US, and he guided me through the process of applying to grad school. So he continued to be my inspiration. And I came back to Mexico and decided to do my own little outreach project. So I went to different middle schools and primary schools and showed the kids that scientists are just like them, they just have different passions. And if you feel that you're alone, that's not true. There's a community waiting for you. Just before starting my PhD, I was lucky enough to go and teach a class in Ensenada, which is 4 hours south from here. And Justin Boyce, who is a lecturer here, come and join me along with my very good friend, David Angeles, who is also a grad student here at Caltech. We taught this class on physical biology. And since then, we have been lucky enough to get support from the CTLO to send our grad students to teach classes. So for example, Marie went to Monterrey and taught a class on quantum mechanics. Heather went to Ensenada and taught a fantastic course on developmental biology. David then decided to teach his own course and went to Guanajuato to teach about genetics. Tom just came back from Merida, where he taught about quantum mechanics also, and my good friend Porfirio also was in Merida teaching synthetic biology. So what happened to me and my classmates is not an isolated case. When you inspire people, they just embrace the challenge and they grow as scientists. Just here in Caltech, we have had 2 SURF students that were former students of Clubes de Ciencia, and this is only in this school. The list keeps on growing year by year. So all I wanted to say is that once you inspire people, they will they will just grow by themselves afterwards. They just need this little spark. To give you some numbers, we have had in the order of 300 instructors, in the US and in Mexico, with a 50-50 male to female ratio. And the same goes for the students, more than 2,200 students so far. But not only that, it blows my mind to think that one day I was in the middle of nowhere in Mexico and this project started there. And now we have 6 countries that are involved in this. So we have Colombia, Bolivia, Peru, Paraguay, and Brazil have joined efforts in this. And you can see that a very simple idea can spread like fire through the entire continent, and we can transform a lot of lives. But these are numbers, and I'd really like more stories. So I want to tell you the story of Juan Carlos Martinez. Juan Carlos is a student at the same campus, goes to the same school that I went to, and he had a very similar goal to mine. But he was told again, he was just a kid from Mexico. He was not going to make it. Fortunately, he participated in one of our workshops, and Alex, who was at the time a postdoc at Harvard Medical School, really inspired Juan Carlos and told him, you are talented, you're going to make it. Just follow my advice. Since then, Juan Carlos went and did great things with his own life. He participated in a summer program at UCSD. And this summer, he was the first student to participate in this program at Harvard Molecular Biology Department. So I want to go back with Juan Carlos to my school and tell all the kids, started from the bottom, now we're here. Now, I don't want to take credit for something that I only deserve. There's a huge team effort, people working on this, countless hours, and most of them are based on the East Coast. So I want to give them the credit that they deserve. But here in Caltech, we have a small but enthusiastic group. So my friends for life, Porfirio and David, have worked as much or even more than me in this project, and I want to give them the credit that they deserve. We'll be also very lucky to get support from Mitch Aiken at the CTLO and our provost, Cindy Weinstein. And I want to invite you to join us in this science education revolution. We're always looking for new instructors. We're always looking for people excited about outreach. And trust me when I tell you that you can really change people's lives. We're very friendly, so feel free to contact us whenever you want. And I want to just welcome you to Caltech and ask you, what will your story look like? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuel. That was a terrific and inspiring talk about how individuals that are like-minded can make a difference in the world. Our next speaker is Celeste Labaz. Celeste is a second-year PhD student in geophysics, and she's studying glacial seismology and seismicity. She's been involved in a number of science outreach efforts, including the GPS's division's exhibition at the Los Angeles March for Science, the State Science Olympiad Tournament, which is something that will be happening again this coming spring, and there are many ways that you can find to be involved in that. And she's also been involved in the Pasadena Unified School District's Science Night program. And to tell us more about the Science Night program, please welcome Celeste.
Hello, new members of the Caltech family. I'm Celeste Lebeds, and as you said, I'm a second-year graduate student in geophysics, and I absolutely love science outreach. It's my favorite thing. I've been hooked on sharing science for years, so I was really thrilled when I came here a year ago and found out that there would be great opportunities for me to volunteer here, too. Through a friend, I got in contact with the Caltech Center for Teaching, Learning, and Outreach, and it's only gotten better and better from there. So during winter and spring quarters of this past year, I visited a lot of the elementary schools in Pasadena as a part of that district's Science Night program. It's basically a traveling circus of cool science demonstrations and fun investigative activities for the kids at those schools to see and do. The outreach events are really fun for the kids, they're really fun for us, and they're really good for the community as a whole. And so as I tell you about what Science Nights are like, I hope that you can consider the way that you can get involved with this program or other really cool outreach programs. So the average science night goes like this. My friends and I each collect all the supplies we need for our various demos, and then we cram ourselves and our gear into one of our cars and head over to the school of the week. Once we get there, we catch some free dinner, which that's pretty sweet, and we get ready for action. Once the kids and their parents arrive, it's time for the greatest show. It's time for science. In one corner of the classroom, one of my friends hands a spinning bike wheel to a girl who's standing on a rotating platform so she can play with angular momentum. And at another table, another one of my friends is using tweezers to jab at a magnet hovering lazily in midair above a superconductor. While the group of kids around, I'm sure they're imagining anti-gravity machines. Out the window on the playground, someone from the chemistry club is wielding a blowtorch, while an audience of kids who are at a safe distance, I assure you, call out the colors of flame that different types of metals make when they're burned. In the next room, LIGO has set up a stretchy fabric sheet where kids can make their own gravitational waves with marbles. And at my table, I have water, dirt, and the ever-popular dry ice, which I can mix together and press into a snowball to be a fairly accurate homemade comet. As I'm making this, the gaggle of kids all around me are absolutely mesmerized by the carbon dioxide vapor, which is pretty cool. I'm mesmerized too. So I blow a puff of air into the mixing bowl, and that stirs up the smokes, and the kids are just shrieking and giggling. These science nights are absolute chaos, but it's really in the best possible way. There's all these questions coming from every direction, from kids and parents, and they're all really good questions. I specifically recall a surprisingly deep conversation with a third grader about why it was cool that comets have water. At first, he was a little shocked to find out that water wasn't a very special Earth thing. But then he started asking where else it might be, and he just hung on every word as I told him about the icy moons of Saturn and Jupiter. You can really see the gears turning in kids' heads when they find out that the building blocks of life can show up in surprising places. And so it's really a special thing to get to watch them consider all these amazing ideas. So after a few hours of showing off our demos and fielding questions from kids and parents, the night kind of winds down, the families start to head home. They do have to make a stop by the telescopes on the playground, of course, because those are really great. There's usually a kid or two that actually doesn't want to leave. They'd rather see their favorite demo again and again all night, and it takes some pretty hard convincing by their parents to actually get them to go home. Once all that's done, my friends and I clean up our stations, and we head home too. On the car ride back from the school towards Caltech, we usually swap stories of the silliest things that kids said that night. My favorite so far was actually at the comet making demo, where a little boy said, "Oh, I know what a comet is. That's when you say something nice to somebody else." So why is it important to have outreach events like these? I mean, the kids are going to take science classes throughout school, so why do they need a few extra demos on top of that? I think that these nights matter because they're for fun. They're just for fun. There's no homework at the end, no tests next week. A kid can just go around seeing cool thing after cool thing, and there's no pressure. That kind of environment is what can really hook you on science. I'm sure that a lot of you have had that kind of experience where just for fun science projects really got you thinking and got you interested and got you here. I know that I certainly remember being entranced by dry ice as a kid. Getting kids interested in science through outreach like this is really good for the broader community in the long term, too. These students, not many of them are actually going to become scientists, but they can all benefit from the style of critical thinking that they're going to learn through learning about the scientific process. And that's going to help them no matter where they end up in the world, where or what careers or anything. And the ones that do want to become scientists, well, when some of us are professors, those kids could be our graduate students, so we might as well start things off right. They're also the future voters who will be electing the representatives that make decisions about our funding and about the application of our research to society. Just like Dr. Kirby said, we really need a generation of voters who like science to create a generation of government that prioritizes it. And just as importantly, their parents are current voters in this pretty critical time right now. During a slow point at one of the science nights, I was chatting with the mother of a little girl who went to the school. Upon finding out that my research was about glaciers, she asked me if it was true that glaciers were actually disappearing. I ended up explaining the greenhouse effect and climate change to her, and she said it made sense when it really hadn't before. So you can see through moments like that a science night for elementary school kids can really reach the broader community and create a positive impact on, everywhere around us. Outreach events are also really important for us as students and as future scientists, primarily because they help us develop our communication skills. The ability to express complex concepts to a lay audience is a really important skill. It's how we convince the public that science research is really interesting and really worthwhile. We're science ambassadors. We're representing science in casual conversations, in addition to special outreach events or science conferences. So we need to be good ambassadors. And unfortunately, we don't always get a ton of opportunities to practice science communication during our normal everyday lives in the lab. So participating in events like this can help us fill in those gaps and develop as science representatives. Secondly, it's also good for us because it's a fun break. I love going to these events because of just what a good time they are. I get to get away from the lab, I get to hang out with my friends who I volunteer with, I get to stop thinking about my to-do list of homework and research, and I just get to have fun with a bunch of silly little kids. It's relaxing, it's entertaining, it's distracting, and it's really motivating. It's just what I need to balance out the hard work that I'm doing most of the time here on campus. So strangely enough, you can get hooked on outreach events in the same way that you can hook the kids on science. It's downright addicting to see these kids have their mind blown by learning something new. And the benefit that it brings to yourself and the community adds to this effect. So at the end of each one of these science nights, I am already looking forward to the next one. And if you're looking forward to the next one too, it's pretty easy to get involved with the Science Night program. And even if elementary school science nights aren't quite your style, there's lots of other outreach programs that you can get involved with at Caltech to make a difference instead. You can contact the Caltech Center for Teaching, Learning, and Outreach for more information. You can find them over in the Center for Student Services, or you can email that email, and I think their website was on a previous presentation too. I think they'll also be around at some of the events, maybe with a sign-up sheet at orientation. So just whenever you see anyone from the CTLO, you can ask them about getting involved. And you can ask me if you see me too, or anyone else, any of the cool people in these pictures, you can ask all of us, and we will all tell you the same thing. Doing science outreach is really worth it, and Caltech provides us with some great opportunities to get to do so. So thanks for listening, see you around campus, and hopefully see some of you at the next Science Night.
Well, thank you very much, Celeste. Well, there's nothing more fun or challenging than trying to explain conservation of angular momentum to an 8-year-old. Next, I would like to introduce Rachel Morton. Rachel's a senior in Lloyd House. She's also a member of one of our two student governance groups, the Interhouse. She's the chair of the Interhouse Council. Rachel is very active in a number of ways on campus, working with the Computing and Mathematical Sciences Student Advisory Committee. She co-directs Caltech's oldest a cappella group, which is called Out of Context. And she's involved with the coding project at Jefferson Elementary School in Pasadena. Please welcome Rachel.
Hi, thank you for the intro. So I'm Rachel, and this is a little bit about a project that was done last year at Jefferson Elementary here in Pasadena. So all of you are here because you have a passion and an affinity for science, technology, engineering, and math. And some of you may have kind of naturally had that right away and been like, I know I want to do this, this is for me. But for most of us, there was some defining early experience that we had that made us really love these fields. And especially for a discipline like coding, this kind of exposure can be kind of hard to get early on. And this was the motivation behind the class CS90, or a section of CS90 taught last year. So this class was taught by Claire Ralph. She's the director of outreach for the CMS department, and it was supported by the Caltech Center for Teaching and Learning Outreach. So this class only had 5 Caltech students in it, and every week we would get together and spend 1 hour doing lesson planning, figuring out what we were going to do for that week, and then we would spend 2 hours at 2 different classrooms at Jefferson Elementary, a 4th grade class and a 5th grade class. So I'm sure you know that computer science is an increasingly important discipline, not only for those who want to go into computer science, but for those who want to go into virtually every discipline or field of STEM, just because of its many applications. And one of the most important things for kids at the 4th and 5th grade level is not knowing everything about programming or knowing everything about computer science, but not being afraid of trying it and not being afraid of what programming is. And in a lot of different countries, programming and computer science principles are becoming a part of the curriculum, but it's been a little slower to happen here in the US. So although many parents want their kids to learn about these concepts, it's not really necessarily guaranteed to happen. So this is why we went to teach at Jefferson Elementary for 4th and 5th graders. And although this might seem a really young age to start to get them involved in computer science, you'd be impressed with how excited they get about it and how much they got out of it. So that takes us to the actual kids at Jefferson Elementary. Here are a few snapshots from the classrooms. We interacted with 2 classrooms, one in the 4th grade, one in the 5th grade, every week, and they were just this amazing, curious, creative group of kids who impressed us every time we went. We would go every Friday, and we'd kind of get there Friday morning, be super tired from whatever we had been studying the night before, and then we would leave so energized and excited about what we were going to do for the next week. So you might imagine that it's a little bit difficult to kind of get 4th and 5th graders interested in programming lessons right away. So at the beginning of every class, we would try to do an engaging exercise to demonstrate some sort of core computer science principle to them. So this was from one of our first lessons. You can see that there's someone blindfolded. That's John. He graduated from Caltech last year. And in this particular exercise, we were teaching the kids kind of how a program operates, or how a computer operates. How a computer is not just a black box that does mysterious things that no one understands, that it's a machine that executes a very specific set of instructions, and it doesn't really deviate from those. So in this exercise, John's blindfolded, and he's the computer, and it was the class's job to kind of direct him from one corner of the room to the other. And we were also showing them that being a careful programmer is very important. In this case, for John's safety, they had to very carefully direct him. So we kind of went through with the kids, talking about the parameters of the program, writing pseudocode, if you will. And of course, this got them very excited to try it out themselves. And we were there to make sure they didn't start running their classmates into the walls. But these kinds of engaging activities were a good way to get them interested in kind of basic computer science concepts. And we were able to cover an impressive amount for 4th and 5th graders. We used games like that to cover for loops, while loops, if statements, even classes, methods, functions. And after we were done with that 15-minute lesson every class, we would go on to a bit of coding. And this past year, we used kind of a very visual coding language called Scratch, if you've heard of it. you can see that every command is a colored block, and we started getting them to do good coding practices early on. We made sure they commented everything, because that's very important. And this was the first piece of code that they kind of came up with. And every week, we try to do an engaging activity and then a game that used the concept that we had taught them in that activity. So the first week, we did the game Pong, if you've heard of it. It's pretty simple logically, and they were very motivated by it because if they were able to complete the game in time, they got to play with their friends. So it's good to have that other aspect of being able to play your application at the end. And after we were done with basic games like Pong, we started doing games like Fizz Buzz, if you've heard of it. And with this game, we got to kind of involve them with if statements, loops, as well as some math principles, like we got to teach them what a mod was, which which their teacher didn't think that they would be able to master, especially for the fourth graders. But she really underestimated how motivated kids get when there is a cartoon cat involved. And they picked up the concept of a mod very quickly, which we were impressed by. And after we did games like that, we would kind of give them more loose structure and allow them to really kind of try different details, try different scenarios, and do projects that really interested them. This particular project, you probably can't tell just from the GIF, but it was trying to teach them the idea of classes. There's a healthy food class and an unhealthy food class, and you get points if you eat a banana because that's the healthy food class. So we were trying a little behavior conditioning there too, along with learning about coding. And right now, we're going to continue this class this term, and we want to start graduating from scratch and get these fourth and fifth graders interested in doing coding in other languages like Python and maybe some beginner app development if we can. And a few weeks through, there was a really quiet girl in one of the classes, and she kept on getting more and more talkative and asking more and more questions. And after class one day, she gave us this little note and said, "I really love coding, thank you so much." And my name's not Rochelle, but it was such a sweet note that it's okay. And this program was possible because Clara Ralph offered to teach it, and she met with us every week and made sure we were kind of giving our best work to the kids. And we got a lot of great support from the Caltech Center for Teaching and Learning Outreach. They kind of made all the connections with the schools and the teachers and made sure that we were able to really focus on just going every week and teaching the kids what we wanted them to learn. And we want to really continue this program this year. Last year, we only had 5 Caltech students involved, but we'd love to get a lot more, and we want to go to different schools. We want to teach people multiple times a week and hopefully do a lot more really cool projects. So if you're interested in doing this, it's not a super big time commitment, and it's so worth it. So please email me or contact anyone at the Center for Teaching and Learning Outreach, or just keep on the lookout for CS90 announcements. And we'd really love to have you on board. So thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, Rachel. I'd like to just thank all of our speakers, Evan, Manuel, Celeste, and Rachel again. So thank you. These are just a few of the opportunities that you can take advantage here to be involved in science ambassadorship, outreach, and helping share your joy of science and encouraging young people to not have limitations and to think about doing things that they might not have done before going into STEM fields and someday coming to Caltech like you are. Now, there's a special group here that was mentioned several times, and that's the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Outreach, or the CTLO, and I'd like to thank Cassandra Horry and Mitch Aiken and Vice Provost Cindy Weinstein for their help in putting together this program and all that they do in the outreach areas. Thank you. So there are many other ways that you can be involved in activities outside the laboratory and the classroom here at Caltech. Of course, many of you are perhaps imagining that's going to be your main activity here, but in fact there are a number of things that you can do in addition to the ones that we've just heard about. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to show a short movie that describes some of the many ways that you can be involved in additional activities. So.
I'm Kelvin Bates. When I'm not in the lab, I end up spending a lot of my time doing theater. When I got here, I never thought I'd be doing any more theater in my life, really. I figured I'm going to Caltech, where they do science. That's all I'm gonna do. I better focus and buckle down from here on out. And I was pleasantly surprised to find that there was an active community doing theater here and plenty of opportunities for people to join in. Most recently, I was in Boldly Go, which was a Star Trek parody musical written by a graduate student here and his brother. It was a ton of fun. I played Captain Kirk. It takes a lot of time, but it creates a really nice sense of community. My advisors have both been very supportive, and they both come to shows that I've put on. For me, it's really important to have some sort of creative outlet. It keeps me more focused and productive when I am trying to do my work in lab, which does still happen.
Hi guys, I'm Bianca Lepe, and I realized that I loved traveling when I was introduced to the Caltech Y. In particular, I was introduced to a program called India Key Coach, which allowed me as a frosh to travel to India and learn a little bit about the culture of India. I really learned a lot about the global perspective. Since coming to Caltech, I've been able to go to India twice. I've traveled to London and the UK, and I've also been to the Galapagos. But I've also known friends who've gone places like backpacking in South America, traveling through Indonesia, as well as traveling across Europe. So I would definitely say that the bounds are limitless. Wherever you'd want to go, there's a possibility of going there.
My name is Brittany Person. I'm on the swim team and water polo team. I knew I needed to swim because I kind of go crazy when I don't swim. I couldn't leave behind swimming. I really needed like the structure of a varsity team. I'd say a lot of us are kind of weird, kind of quirky, but that's really fun in my opinion. Half the people just kind of jumped in and they're having fun and they just work hard. Sometimes they work harder than anyone else. I love coming to practice and working with them every day. I love going to breakfast afterwards with them, and I love at conference championship cheering them on and having them cheer me on. And really the team atmosphere is amazing, and I've never experienced anything like it.
Hi, I'm Michael Post. When I first got to Caltech, I had the opportunity to join the Graduate Student Council, or the GSC, and as chair, I got to lead this whole organization, advocating for a grad student's academic life, its extracurricular life, and its social life. One of the cooler things I got to do was actually have a battle of the bands. We decided to call it Tech Stock. It turned into this really epic all-day music festival. And it was also a really amazing avenue to meet more faculty. All of the leadership administration positions are filled by faculty, and their doors are open. You can just go talk to them. It was a really great experience and opportunity to be able to follow both my scientific passions in lab and also my passion for leadership through this organization.
Hi, I'm Nick Trank.
Hi, I'm Tiffany, and we were part of the team that organized the very first Science Olympiad state competition here at Caltech.
Usually the state competitions are run at local high schools, but this time we managed by talking to administration and getting a lot of faculty support to bring it here on campus. We brought a lot of eager middle school and high school students to compete. We got to interact with them, they all got to see the great Caltech campus, and overall it was a lot of fun.
Everyone was really excited because they were at Caltech and also they were about to compete. Students just got to enjoy their passions. They got to spend an entire day doing science, working really hard with their team and watching all their efforts pay off.
It's been so much fun working with all the Caltech students to make this possible.
My name is Nishant Desai, and I'm one of the house presidents. As Caltech students, it's kind of interesting that we get to run our own houses. As a part of that, we have to make sure that we do it right and we do it smoothly, and that's sort of what I'm here to do. Coming into Caltech, I had never really thought of student government as something that really appealed to me. It was out of the blue, something that I really found a passion for, and really made me realize that it's important to sort of embrace a diversity of opinions. Not just your own, it's important to listen to people that disagree with you. Probably more than it is important to listen to people who agree with you. And that's like something that I've learned that I didn't really expect to, and something that I'm definitely going to take out of Caltech.
I'm Michelle Wong, and I'm on the Caltech women's basketball team.
You have your community in your house, you have your community in your study groups, but basketball is like a completely different dynamic. It challenges you in different ways. I don't always want to be studying, so basketball is like a good release from that. It also just gives me more energy. Sometimes when I come back from practice, I feel more energized from working out, and that kind of motivates me to do my other work. So right now I'm in Brown Gym. It's become a very comforting place for me, especially last year after our 2 conference wins, and the celebration that happened in this gym, I think, is definitely grown to be a very positive atmosphere. The best part about being on the women's basketball team is how challenging it is. You basically have to tap into something else that I never really thought about before I came here.
My name is Mckenna, and for a lot of my time at Caltech, I've been involved with ASCID, which stands for the Associated Students of the California Institute of Technology. It's our student government on campus. I had various responsibilities, from like planning meetings to helping people when they want to have parties get all of ASCID's equipment. One of the things that everyone who's on the board of directors does is midnight donuts. At midnight on a random night in the middle of term, basically every undergraduate comes out onto the Olive Walk and demands donuts. It's really fun. For one night, I get to see literally everyone on campus in the same spot within 20 minutes, and I think that's a really cool experience that you definitely wouldn't have anywhere other than Caltech.
Hi, I am Nadia Herrera. I have been playing the violin since I was in 3rd grade, and honestly, it's another part of my life that you would consider as essential as waking up and eating every day. And coming here, I had no expectations for the music program because it is such a science-focused school. But what I encountered were very high-level musicians and people who were just absolutely wonderful to work with. And working in chamber groups so consistently just allows you to grow more as a musician. Once I get to the music house, it's like time stops. I stop worrying about my experiments and I can just play music and be very happy. I do spend all day in the lab. I think science, science, science. I wake up thinking science, I go to bed thinking science, and just, you know, every now and then being able to go to bed thinking I have a concert tomorrow is just, it's a change of scenery. It helps me keep touch with like that part of like my humanity, who I am, as opposed to like I'm a scientist and that's it.
I'm Rob Anderson.
I'm Adrian Costantino.
And we are here in the Formula SAE garage, the home of Caltech's first Formula SAE racing team, where we designed and built a complete electric vehicle from the ground up.
And the part that I really enjoyed, I got to lead the direction of the club, but also just be able to interact with all the students and people in industry. It gave me that experience of pretty much a startup culture. Being able to fail and learn from all those mistakes was extremely valuable.
My favorite experience was doing all the design and then doing the simulations and really seeing how a lot of the theory that we learned actually apply to the real engineering world.
The electric competition is very new. All the teams are kind of trying to figure things out. And even though things didn't work out too well at competition, it was one of the most fun and exciting parts about the whole club this year. We learned so much.
This summer I'm interning at SpaceX. All companies really look for people who have real hands-on experience.
Being a part of this club and founding it also got me my opportunity at SpaceX. I just kind of started with an idea I had, and Caltech really were supportive the whole entire way through it.
We have a small campus community, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing to do. It means that you want to do everything because you know everyone and you know everything that's going on, and it's also cool that you want to get involved in all of it.
Really, what I think is most important of being successful at Caltech is being open-minded and willing to try new things.
It's really easy to get involved. You have so many options. You don't have to be in the lab all the time. You have the opportunity to do so many other things at Caltech.
All right, well, as Nadia said, remember humanity. So I want to thank everyone for coming today and give you a welcome to the Caltech community. And at this point, I would like to ask our new undergraduates and their parents to stay behind as everyone else leaves. I'm going to ask Barbara Green and Leslie Nye, our Associate Deans of Undergraduate Students, they have a special announcement and they'll be coming to the stage. For our new graduate students, as you exit the building, you will find someone from grad orientation who will help you find your next event. We also want to invite the new graduate student parents and family to attend the parents' receptions. There's some signs outside the building pointing you to the location. And this concludes convocation. Thank you.